Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons, how are you? How's everybody doing? Chris Ryan, Alex Simmons, Teel James Glenn. We're getting right into it today. We have our special guest, the one, the only, like I said, Teel James Glenn, who is here to talk to us about this amazing series he's been writing, about the challenges and the trials and the tribulations of that kind of thing. And we're going to see where it goes from there, because every time we have Teel on, well, you know, the steering wheel comes off in our hands and they hand it to the next guy, then the wheels go everywhere.
It's a Buster
Let me
Keaton
show you.
moment. Yes.
Alex,
I'm a disaster.
I'm going to show everybody what we're talking about as far as what Teel has been working on, among many other things. The one main thing we're talking about today is the Paradise Investigation series. Okay, and here's the first one. This is Teel James Glenn, Not Born of Woman, Paradise Investigations, Book 1. Beautiful cover. There we go. And we have, make sure that stays. We have Teel James Glenn, A Walking Shadow, Paradise Investigations, Book 2. Available now. You can get them, boom, right away. But coming out in May, if you can see that, there you go. The Undiscovered Country, Paradise Investigations, Book 3.
That's
And
dos.
I
Dos,
can't wait to get
tres.
that. I have that on pre-order.
Uno, dos, tres.
I actually had read the second one in an ebook, but I just wanted to have the paperback, so I'm excited to have those. I ordered the third book as a paperback, so it's very exciting.
Put them on the shelf right next to each other.
But why many of you might be extra intrigued
Okay, listen
is
now,
because
folks.
you are very familiar already with Adam Paradise. You say, but how, Chris? We
That's what they
haven't
say.
heard of him. Well, yes, you have. Teel James Glenn, welcome to the show. And will you tell us, please, a little bit about Adam Paradise?
Well, thank you, gentlemen. And I use that term
Okay,
loosely.
then.
Adam Paradise is a private investigator in New York in 1939, but he has an interesting background. He's 160 something years old and is the creature of the Frankenstein legend. In this universe, I posture that since Mary Shelley says she heard the legend, which she did say, because there was a Frankenstein family, I posture that it really happened and that her book got a number of things wrong, but the general story correct. And Adam has spent over 160 years up in the Arctic, living from wrecked ship to wrecked ship in the ice, where he educated himself. And with the money from there were various treasures. He came back to civilization in 36 and then came to New York because it was a cosmopolitan city, and someone who was 7'2" and scarred could blend in more easily. And because he wants to understand what it is to be human, he sets himself up as the guy that people come to with problems, a private investigator.
Yeah. And that's where we meet him here
that's in book
Not
one,
Born
Not
of
Born of
Woman,
Woman.
the first novel. Could you tell us a little bit about this novel?
In the first book, a Roma woman, a hunchback woman named, excuse me, Vandoma Calderash,
It's
comes
easy
to
for
him.
you to say.
I know.
Yeah.
And asks him to recover the Koshte Bak, which is a necklace which has come down through her family, and is actually a fairly powerful occult object. And her brother has pawned it to cover a gambling debt. And she's afraid that the gangster to whom he pawned it will not, she doesn't have much money, and she will not be considered reasonable, because he, as she says, always they are saying gypsies bad. We are not. Roma are good, honest people. And so Adam takes on her case, not for the $20 that she has or the promise that she'll work it off, but for a home cooked meal.
There you go.
Because he hasn't had one in a long time. And he goes to the loan shark and discovers it has already been bought out of hock by a pawn shop. Doesn't know how the guy knew it was there, but he bought it out. So Adam then has to go to the pawn shop. And eventually we discover that the pawn shop owner has been murdered and the object is missing. And it may
And
fit
the
into a
mystery
pattern of other things.
ensues. Yes.
Yes.
So you have
Much
so you have crime, you have the mystery, and in the background you have,
monster.
since it's 1939,
Schnazis.
Nazis.
Because
Yes.
this is 2 weeks after the large rally at Madison Square Garden,
Right.
where 20,000 of the brown shirts, the American Nazi Bund, showed up. Adam goes directly up against them.
Yep. Now,
Because
that should be enough. That should be enough to whet everybody's appetite.
yes, but
So-
the other thing about Adam is that he is fairly steeped in philosophy and
Yes, he is.
an erudite, speaks number of languages, and really is not a violent person, even though he is aware that he had a violent past when he first came into being with the emotions of a child, and is somewhat trying to make up for that.
And sometimes it's allowed, and other times, he's attacked. So I tell you what, it's yes, there's the literary references and the philosophy and all that. But I think the thing that attracts me most to Adam Paradise is he has a really good heart. And that doesn't mean that, he had a choice of three. I'm not saying that. His actions prove him to be a good human being. Now, that'll bring us to giving us a teaser for Teel James Glenn's A Walking Shadow. Adam
Book two.
Paradise, Book 2. Can you tell us a little bit of that? Give us that kind of, whet your appetite. Hopefully we'll get some sales on both of them today.
Well,
And pre-order on the third one.
in the second book, he's actually in Chinatown watching a Cantonese film, because he is, one of the things he's doing is learning Cantonese, because he is always learning. He always wants to know more. And the venue is held up, and Adam is forced to kill somebody by throwing a chair through him. Yes. And this embroils him. It turns out that there are a number of attacks by what appear to be Tong members in the city. And but Adam's friend, Hang Ku Lee, otherwise known as Hank, she does not believe it is the Tong. She has a number of contacts in the Tong. She's a very successful Chinese businesswoman who spends a lot of time raising money for the Manchurian relief. And without giving too much away,
please don't.
it ends up involving him with Japanese fifth columnists in the United States, and possibly opens up a larger world beyond our physical realm that he discovers in this book. Because in each of the books, my intent with each of the books is that he will deal with some underrepresented or oppressed minority, because he's the ultimate outsider, and will keep enlarging his view of the universe. He discovers in the first book that he's not the only anomaly that exists.
Right.
And in the second book, he discovers even more, that there are other layers to reality. Let's say.
So let's tickle book 3 a bit.
Well,
yes.
Yep, that leads us to, I'm trying to get this clearly.
There you go.
No. You almost had, yeah. Back a little bit.
There you go.
That's good right there.
So The
For those of you who can't
Undiscovered
read it,
Country, book
the
3.
tombstone says Adam Paradise, 1776 to 1939. He was a man of many parts.
Jeez. Okay.
So
And
where does this find us? Because I haven't read this one. I'm waiting for it to come out.
Well, actually, the prologue of it takes place before the first book.
Okay.
In the first book, the reason that Vandoma comes to him is she mentions that her friend Leroy, who's a shoeshine boy at Penn Station, even though he's a 40-year-old man, um, um, has said that Adam helped get his brother off on a bummed up charge. And as Adam says, yeah, well, I did, but I had to break a guy's arm in 3 places. Usually my face is enough to scare them into confessions. And so we have that story where he also meets the Queenie, who was the policy runner in Harlem in those years, who went up against the Italian mob. And then we skip ahead to at the end of the second book, something happens, and without giving it away for those who haven't read it, causes Adam to be in the hospital, let's say.
Right.
And so while he's there, there's something called the realm between, which may or may not be real. It may or may not be purgatory. We don't know. Adam doesn't know. But in there, he encounters Leroy's brother, who says, "Help me." And when Adam gets out of the hospital, he interviews Leroy and discovers that he hasn't heard from his brother, who's been in New Orleans for quite some time. And Adam knows he has to go. So Adam and Vandoma and her brother, Nico, get on a train and head to New Orleans. And where he goes up against the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
And some other dark forces. Because what many people don't realize is that the German segregation laws were based on Jim Crow laws from America. They came to America and studied our southern states' laws to implement them so they could separate and exterminate the Jews. And also the major spy hub for the Germans in America, and this is only a background in the story, it's not really dealt with per se, was in New Orleans. Their council had a huge radio room in the basement. And up until they were kicked out of the country, that was the reason why so many ships were sunk by wolf packs. He would literally have spotters all along the East Coast and Gulf Coast who would call in, "There's a ship leaving tomorrow heading for England." And they would radio to the sub pack and they would intercept them. And we didn't know this, or at least as far as I could tell, the United States didn't realize it until after they kicked him out and discovered the radio stuff in the basement. Okay, so that council is mentioned in the book, but not seen. Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So I got to do this little bit of a momentary roundup for some of our listeners here. So, folks, he took a fictional, so-called fictional character, a classic fictional character, often referred to as a monster, and he has taken that background, done some research about the fictitious scenario and the author who wrote the book, brought that into a world where he has moved this character, elevated this character, given this character not only backstory, but development, and then created a series of 3 books thus far. And in each story, which again, we can still say that this character, in this case, Adam, is a fictional character based on a classic fictional character. And yet, in each story, he has taken on social evils that are very much legitimate, real, based in reality, based in historical information. And so he's added mystery and murder and mayhem, at the same time, social relevance, and in a couple of cases, racial awareness or bias. So he's layered his stories in a world that brings the audience the titillation of fantastic, outrageous, action, adventure, mystery, murder, but also something to think about. And you've done this. How long is it taking you to write these three books?
Um, I wrote the first book probably about 5 or 6 months because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Honestly, I am a pantser, and it was originally going to be a short story. And at about the 3,000 word mark or 4,000 word mark, I went, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no, there's too much here. And my writers group were like, go keep going, keep going. Um, and I finished it and thought it was a one-off. I would have been very happy if it had ended there because it's a you can figure it out mystery besides all the rest of it. I try to play fair.
Mm-hmm.
But within 2 weeks, the second book crawled into my head. And um and it was like, no, I can't. I have a lot to say. I can say part of it is part of the part of the motivation to write it is that I am white Anglo-Saxon American middle class spawn, um, and it's very hard to make comment outside my own lane. And I've got, in fact, when I pitched the first book to a literary agent, he said, "Well, how are you allowed to write Roma?" And aside from the fact that I actually have Roma friends, um, uh, I was like, well, I found a main character who is not. I found the ultimate outsider. So you can't tell me it's not in my lane. And honestly, he can't only encounter white Anglo Saxons, in which case I'd fucking have to write a story that takes place in Belfast or, I'm like, screw that. So, nevertheless, I'm extremely careful about trying to get it right and explore these other cultures. I'm like Adam. I find the unknown to be fascinating, not frightening,
Mm.
and I find other cultures to be gloriously interesting. I want to know more stuff. I love the haka and I love the rain dance and I love Bali dancing and I love, um, honestly, I like a full plate and I like food from everywhere. So I can't
Smorgasbord. Yeah.
understand. Yeah, I really can't understand the um, shackling of oneself to your own, yeah, maybe you have a deeper knowledge of your own or an intimate knowledge, but there are lots of first person sources and there are sensitivity readers and there's historical precedent. So um, there's a lot of stuff that I'm fucking angry about. Pardon my
Yep.
French.
It's okay. I'll cut
And
it.
yeah, les merdes.
So
Yeah.
there's a point you make, Teal, that about appropriation, or can
yeah,
we write about other things? And it seems to me that you say, well, if you go with respect and do your due diligence and your research, and then you get all of that checked by someone who would know, then you're at the very least paying tribute. Can
and
you speak on
that's
that?
yeah, that's very much what I wanted to be. Um, I want to open up windows into the other cultures, maybe in a way that other people wouldn't have seen. Um, Even when, say, for instance, in the second book, when there are Japanese bad guys, I also make sure that I put a Nisei family who are not.
Mm.
That it was never about the enemy Japanese. It was always about the enemy military of the Japanese.
Well,
And I try.
it's also key to understand that there's a difference between what you're doing, what I've done, what Chris has done, and people like us or writers like us, what we have done with that kind of material. and what someone does when they just write to stereotypes.
Yeah,
When
I
they're
mean,
just, they're
you
just doing
above
the
all.
carbon, they're just doing the marionette, the carbon copy scenario. And I often say, and I'll give the mic back to you in a sec. I often say that for on infinitum, and in most cases, white males have written stories that involved white females, but those males weren't women. So what are you going to say? You can't write about that doesn't work. I'm sorry, if you're going to break the rule this way, then everything's fair game. But it always comes back to the integrity of the writer. Do your homework, do your research, and as Chris was saying also, run it past people who live the life you're trying to reflect or touch upon,
Yeah.
and
I
take
mean,
their feedback.
growing up, Andre Norton wrote great stories, usually male protagonist, often Native American, Dene or other, and she was a she. So and it's she did it with love. And you got the most problematic character in history and wrote a great series with him with Tarzan. You know, I mean that's pretty much the white savior trope, put up on a pedestal, and yet if it's done right, it can be more about human spirit than color skin.
And
You
and
know?
even talk about the creator, or I should say the literary creator of the very character that you're utilizing was a woman.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
so
Who
it's
kept her
it's a woman
husband's
writing
heart in
about
a
a
jar?
dead man.
Yeah, and who kept
A
her
bunch of
husband's
them
heart
sewn
in a
together.
jar by her bed.
Kept her husband's heart in a jar. Oh boy.
Yes, yes. After Byron died, she kept his heart in a jar in her bedroom the rest of her life.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I'll give you my
Mm.
heart, darling. So but yeah, I mean, so it was my way to be able to make comment and to be able to dip into cultures um and again to try and have an overview that even though it's a first person narrator, it's really a narrator from way far back because A, it's back in time, B, it's somebody who is actually not part of any of the culture.
Right.
And I do actually, as the books progress, I use bits and pieces of dialogue from the original novel
Mm.
and in his memories and flashback scenes because I'm treating this as if it is a direct sequel. That when he goes off into the snow, I'm picking him up right after that. You
Right.
know, and as with Vandoma, I think it's too big a spoil. Everybody realizes by the end of the first book, she basically becomes his Velma. She becomes his secretary, um, and sort of, as in most cases with women, takes over his life and organizes things for him. Um,
Because he needs
in that
that.
sense, in that sense, he is just as much male as all of us. Um,
Can I
He's
ask you?
limited.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Can I
yes,
ask you a
exactly.
question here? You we were sort of on the trail of how you put these three stories together, and you had very interestingly said book one was a one-off until book two said no, it's not. And then how long did it take you to get through book two? And then what led to book three?
Book two was about 3 months, give or take, because it was a straight shot. Book three almost killed me.
Ooh,
Mostly,
good opening
almost
line.
well, they say writing a book is like reading a book, except it's trying to kill you. This
Yeah.
is the first time it's ever happened, um, and it was mostly because of the research I had to do. The horrible things I had to read about lynchings and about Jim Crow law and the history were. I literally would be in tears sometimes while I was doing the research and figuring out how to use it in the story and not make it exploitive, how not to make it purient,
Mm.
how to show how that literally he is the most human person in the fucking story. Sorry, he is the most human person in the story, the flipping story. Um, Certainly compared to these monsters who really see other sentient beings as less than human. And I had to I spent a lot of time balancing it, even just deciding how to use the language. I tried to use only language that would have been in a book in 1939. I will never use the N word, but I had to find other words that were acceptable from the period. So colored and Negro were the good words. And when I needed a bad guy to be particularly lousy, I used darky. I won't go any further than that because that's at the edge of being really revolting. But it was really tough because I was dealing with stuff that just was, there was no fun in it. You know, there was no, as much as I enjoy the characters and I enjoy being there with them, the fact that they had to deal with so much darkness in this one.
But why did you go there? Why did you go into book 3? Why did you go into that territory?
New Orleans, yeah.
Okay, basically, I said, who does Adam need to speak up for? Who is the next group that needs a champion? And one of the things about Adam is that he's not made homogeneously. He wears gloves because his two hands don't match, and one of them is darker in texture than the other, as is one of his legs. So technically, he kind of he's his own segregated body. He's desegregated from in his own flesh. But and I did that specifically because I wanted him to represent what mankind could be if it were innocent and caring at the same time on the outside. And New Orleans, if you're going to do a monster, New Orleans is like a cool place to go for monsters. But B, I wanted to deal with the Klan. And while they were active in New York, I didn't want to keep all my stories with him in New York. New York is a character in the first 2 books, but I felt if I just keep repeating the formula, I very much tried to make each book different, not just here's a murder and then he does it. You know, the first book is a slow build case. The second book is sort of a little more action and wilder. And the third book, he's a fish out of water even more than usual. He's diminished because he starts the book with diminished capacity after what happened in the second book. And in my mind, and this is purely the writer guy, not now the literary guy, is like I kind of eventually want to run through all the universal monsters in some form, shape, or color. You know, and so what better place to run into zombies than New Orleans?
Sure.
And to also deal with there's a hoodoo priestess in the story because hoodoo is a religion and is an honored religion, and the zombie is not the zombie of her religion. It's something else, because in real voodoo and in real hoodoo, they're not dead people that are animated. They're live people that are drugged. They don't raise the dead. You just live in a state between.
They lower the living.
Yes, very much. They basically like dull you out. It's like OxyContin in the extreme. And what he encounters, what they encounter, is something more akin to the movie version of what a zombie is. And I actually make that distinction. It's so I could have something, because zombies are really not scary. They're just guys walking around going, you know. And again, I didn't want to dishonor the religion by going with the Hollywood trope of the religion. I know people who are Hunans. I lived with a Hunan. He was one of my roommates in an apartment, and it's actually a very beautiful religion. So it just seemed the natural thing, and I actually have pitched, and I've got 3, 4, 5, and 6. I've got a contract for.
Excellent.
And the fourth one, he's going to California, going to take on Hollywood and cross some stuff there. Because again, I wanted to keep it fresh by not having it always be in the same place, always have, the same background. It would get stale, I think.
I have 2 quick questions. Both of them are going to be addressed to Teal, but the second one is addressed to Teal and Alex. So I'm
Oh.
going to ask both so that Alex, you can start thinking of the second one. The first question, and I'm going to ask both, and then hopefully Teal, you can start, and then well, I don't know how you'll do the second one. I'd love to see if you can talk. I'm not sure if this is officially a question or a request, but there is the attraction to write utilizing public domain characters, and the creature or the creation of Frankenstein is in the public domain now. So I'd love for you to be able to talk about that and the challenges of putting this very well known and immensely used character, right? He's been everything from a Universal monster to B pictures to Marvel comics, on and on and on, right?
Including the most recent incarnation.
And yes,
Yeah.
the Guillermo del Toro version, kind of a nude heartthrob Frankenstein. So so I'd love you to be able to talk about that and talk about the challenges of taking this well-known character, putting your own life into it, and placing it into very historical context while being true to the demands of a crime genre, supernatural genre. There's a lot of things you're doing at once, and I think the people
I
who come to the
straddle, yeah.
show would be like, wow, how's that happen? Secondly, both of you with Adam Paradise, Teal, and Alex with Aaron Day, also known as Blackjack, you both write about the 1930s. So I'd love both of you. And both of the characters are as a far outsiders of the 1930s culture as you can get, 1930s America as you can get. And I've read extensively your Adam Paradise. I've read both so far, and I've read and I've been honored to write a few of Blackjack's adventures. And both of these sets of stories are so relevant to today. It would be great to kind of, I guess that's the bonus question. How's that happen after all of this? So there you go,
Oh,
Teal.
all
I'm
right.
going to sit back and just listen.
Yes, no, maybe, and blue. All right, moving on. I write about the 30s because I really believe that from 36 to 40, the world changed. It's, to me, the most exciting time in the 20th century. They're mostly healed from the war. Science is coming in a big way.
You mean World War
Industries
One, right?
yeah, after the Great War. Things are coming in. Technology is really rapidly expanding. Cultural norms are changing, and it hasn't collided with the violence of World War II yet. It's on the edge. I mean, Manchuria's happened, and there's the Ethiopian struggles and all of that. But there's a sense like a boiling pot of energy there. Secondly, to keep it from being fan fiction, which essentially it is. I mean, I have to horrifyingly admit that. If you're going to take a character and do a story with it, a pre-existing character, you have to be true to what the soul of that character is. And honestly, I think in Shelley's Frankenstein, as opposed to Totoro's, where they made the monster completely pure and the doctor completely evil, it is about the gray areas of creation. It is about, because the monster is horrible. If you will not give me love, then I will accept your fear. Is one of his quotes. And as any petulant 2-year-old might. And so to keep true to the character, that's in Adam. But because he's a self-reflective person, and he's supposedly made of all the finest parts, including brain. And the question of the book is, what is a soul? Does it have a soul? And I mean, ultimately, the monster has more of a soul than the doctor.
The creator.
Yeah. And So I think that um, by exploring that and not just exploring the fact that I have a superhero, I've got a 7 foot. I scaled him down. In the book, he's supposed to be 8'2", but it's a bit much to even get close to like getting around. So okay, they got the detail. That's why I say there's a couple of details wrong in her book. He's 7'2", which is still huge for that period. I mean, it's bigger than Doc Savage would be.
It's kind of
Um,
huge for this period.
yeah, I'm 6'6", and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't I when you see photos of me next to other people, I look like I'm a different freaking species anyway. But like the Dutch giant who played the God of War
Yeah.
in the game, he's 7'2". That's pretty much the build and size
Right.
that Adam is.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who played the bad guy on Reacher that third season.
Right.
That's pretty much Adam. You know,
Yep.
although he's not so beefy.
Right.
Adam's a little more gold. But anyway, so and it's relevant because if you're talking about fascism, human freedom, um, the quest to do good, to find the path of light, that never goes out of style. I mean,
Unfortunately.
yeah, I mean, you know, Jekyll and Hyde is as relevant now as it was when Stevenson wrote it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've written Dracula in my Cowboy in Carpathia. I have him as a bad guy, and
Great
again,
book.
I write to write it true to the book. He is a prince of Wallachia. He is, you know, cunning and all of that. You know, he's a giant mosquito. And so, but again, I love the 30s. I'm fascinated. You know, I grew up on all the movies of it, and you can read enough first person uh, accounts. And I would say this though about Blackjack: he is only unusual in the white dominated cinema and literature of the period. There were adventurers like him.
Oh.
There was a black pilot who went over, they wouldn't let him fly here. He went over to fly with the escadrille, and then he went on to Ethiopia and headed their
Eugene
airport and
Bullard.
went to China. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just that in you know the filter of this skin, we don't see them. I mean, only till recently as people suddenly realized that Bass Reeve existed. You know, um,
Well, let me
so I
give
think that
Alex very quickly, since you brought it up, some flowers, because in the original comic book run, he'd always save a page or two in the back for real history, and it would
yeah,
be unsung or undersung black heroes or black adventurers or black um, uh, inventors, you know, exceptional people
explorers. Yeah,
yeah. So, and
so
if I remember
they
correctly,
just
that
everything
pilot
was
was one of them. So,
Yes.
yeah,
yeah,
everybody was just
flowers
whitewashed.
for
That's
Alex.
you know,
Let me
um,
jump in here and quickly say, hey, thank you for the flowers. They're lovely.
Thank
Um,
you. I
I
made
think
them.
and because of my something of what Teal was saying is actually something I tried to even expand on at that time period because the section in the back of the comics was also about bringing attention to, as you said, unsung or undersung heroes, but it actually also identified some women and people of Chinese or Japanese cultures,
Right.
because part of what the 30s represented to me was this time period when communication and travel, global travel, changed, expanded, and became a little bit more convenient or possible, and subsequently, ignorance of what was going on elsewhere, of other cultures, began to become a little bit dimmer, because the information could travel quicker. People were going places. People were discovering things. And that's one of the things that appeals to me about the 30s was it was a time period of discovery, of travel, of awareness. True, only certain people had that advantage, but still it was happening. And that made it interesting. What they did in film and on the radio and newsreels and things, that was again the white filter that you're talking about,
Yeah.
Teal. You know, if we don't tell the rest of the world about these people, about people, black people, Asian people, whatever, if we don't talk about it, it didn't happen. So we'll just keep painting this image. So with me, with Blackjack, one of my reasons for doing this series was not only to bring or shine a light on the efforts and the history and the developments and creations and accomplishments of black people from that era and before, but also of trying to better represent other cultures from that era, but with a more honest lens. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of the films that I grew up watching, I know Teal, you saw them a little bit sooner than me, but not by much, was, but was, I mean, 90% of any films I saw with Arabs, with Japanese, with Chinese characters in lead positions were always played by white people in makeup. Yeah. And so subsequently, all the language and any other representation of the cultures was through that Hollywood filter. All right. And so I was trying to, in some of my stories, bring a little bit more truth or a little bit more accuracy forward. The other thing I will say, and I think in terms of your question about how it can still be relevant, is unfortunately, many human beings do not learn from the past. We keep repeating the same mistakes, and actually, some bodies attempt to erase any possibility of us learning from what happened before by altering publications, films, outward public statements, blah, blah, blah. Because again, if I can't find this information printed anywhere, documented anywhere, then I don't know about it. And you can tell me something different, and I have nothing to compare that to. So ultimately, whether it's comic books, films, literature of a higher scale, like some sort of nonfiction publications, whatever one can do to continue to record that information, to tell those stories, to tell bits and pieces of those stories, to interweave reality with fiction, anything to keep that door open is not only fun and a privilege and all. It's absolutely necessary, or else the code for everything that we're about will get erased and it'll be rewritten by people that I don't hold any respect for or any hope for a better future.
One of the things I do in the third book is, um, well, in first and second book, I make a point of one of Adam's neighbors is what would then have been called a transvestite. He's gay, and he's actually a nurse at the hospital as Donald, but he's Dottie when he's in the other persona. And in the third book, there's a link between things. Adam goes to the Cafe Lafayette, which was the first openly gay bar in the United States, which was in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of my stumbling points is I spent like 2 weeks trying to find a picture of Mary, who was one of the three owners, and I couldn't find a specific picture because it was also a desegregated bar. Um, so I had to leave a physical description of her out of it. She's there, but I try to put the things that really existed but were completely erased, were completely left out, to try and give, oddly enough, in this fiction, as real a view of the world as it existed
As
then.
opposed to a homogenized view.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
a Hollywood version of it. And so, but that, again, that's one of the things. I mean, I actually have a friend in New Orleans who I asked to check on the street stuff for me to make sure I got it right. I spent a lot of time looking through maps and what have you. I've been to New Orleans once, but it was only for a couple of days. But it was enough to give me a feel. But
Before we wander into geography, I wanted to point out that you were both talking about the 30s and how the world's changing then, and how some parts of the world were suppressed, and there was a confrontation between those who wanted the world one way and those who wanted the world another way. And one of the reasons why Adam Paradise series and the Blackjack series both have so much life to them is because whether we'd like to or not, we are in another era of change and confrontation and a tug of war as to which direction we're going to wind up going. And both sets of books, it's the humanity of the main characters and their support that that makes the difference in whether the story is compelling or not. So whatever era we're writing in, it still comes down to plot is character, character's plot, and it's the humanity of those characters, whatever form that they're taking, that will make a work come to life.
Mm.
Teel, we hadn't talked about, I'm going to push you again on the challenges of dealing with a public domain character. Alex and I have dealt with public domain characters, and we both wrote them, and then we didn't do anything with them. So that might be in the future. But what are the challenges? Because there are people who are very interested in, well, that's an
It's
established character. I want to write about that. What are the responsibilities? And what?
But first off, I've always felt like I was either way ahead of the wave or way after. And it seems that somehow with Adam, I'm right in the middle of the wave. There's Frankenstein stuff everywhere suddenly in the last couple of years. The drawback to working with a public domain character is that if you decide to write, I'm going to say Tarzan, because technically Tarzan is public domain.
Right.
Although don't buy it, they'll come after you. But say you wanted to write Tarzan. Well, it becomes, okay, I'll write my spin on Tarzan. Well, somebody else can write a spin on Tarzan, and somebody else can write a spin on Tarzan, and suddenly there's 5 Tarzan books out,
Right.
all of them completely different. So you have to, really believe that your take is unique. You have to really believe that it's worth it. And my one thing is, you have to respect it. So many
Respect the
people who
source.
do,
Yes.
they completely piss on the original. The remakes of things like Land of the Lost, where they turned it into a horrible comedy with Will Ferrell.
That was
You know,
terrible. Yeah.
Why would you take something that had a loyal audience and then do something that makes fun of it? I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Like Winnie the Pooh, the horror movie.
Who do you think that this is for? So, I mean, if you're going to do the public domain character, I think unless you want to come up with your own character, I think you need to do it in the spirit of the character you're doing. I mean, doing Sherlock Holmes as a vampire is kind of like anti everything that Conan Doyle wanted for his character. It was about rationality. When they made in the original Lone Ranger writer's guide that Franz Stryker wrote, it said, never give a specific time. It's vaguely between the 1870s and the 1890s. Never locate it in a specific place, although it can, make it small town, but it can be near Topeka or whatever. And never have him meet a historical person. And what did they do in the last couple of Lone Ranger movies? They had specific historical persons. They said it in specific dates, and they were big stories, not little stories about the farmer, and which was the whole point of the character. So basically, you did everything the character's not supposed to do. So that's like, I'm going to do a Tarzan story, but he's going to be a computer technician living in a megalopolis. What's the point? Make your own character.
Right.
So in this case, my Adam is, I'd like to think, the fulfillment of the direction outlined by the original story. And I take it warts and all. He's guilty. He killed a child. He murdered people. And even though he now understands that wrong, at the time, it was the 2-year-old impulse. So I can take it and extrapolate it. So if I was going to do a Winnie the Pooh story, and I wanted to make it scary, it would be Winnie would be the hero,
Right.
because Winnie is the heroic one. So, that would be how you'd continue it. Winnie the
Right.
Pooh, the thorn monster or something. So it seems to me that a part of it is, and this is a big bugaboo of mine, people talk about villains are always more interesting. And I say that's because you're a lousy writer. If you, it's easy to make a hero boring. It's harder to make a hero interesting, but ultimately much more satisfying.
Right.
Superman who can never fall down is boring. A Superman who can be hit by a shell and tripped is more interesting. Who has to make a decision between giving up his secret identity to save someone, or which would then allow him, but not giving it up and being able to save many more. Give
Right.
him real problems that he would have. So for me, taking a public domain character is like, okay, where in the story is there, what can I pull out of it? What was the arc of the character in the story? And do I
Right.
continue the arc, or have him go against that arc at some point and go, no, I want to experience what it is to be the other, but acknowledge that came first.
Right.
Um,
I
you
would
know,
just
I'm
I would just clarify one. Superman's not in public domain. And
Never
if
will be.
you are interested in doing public domain, do your due diligence. Make sure the character is actually in public domain. Right?
yes, and
Yeah.
because it's on Project Gutenberg does not mean it's public domain.
Right.
There are many things on Project Gutenberg that particular edition of a book is out of copyright, but not the copyright on the story.
Yeah.
Look up the original text on there, but you can't necessarily do anything with it. It's 1932 and before,
Right.
but exceptions even to that.
I wanna just, because I think Chris is going in this direction. Go back to your three books again, because
Yep.
again, that's we're really examining the
Because here's what you've done
yeah
with it, right? That
yeah
kind of thing. Yeah.
right.
Go ahead. What were
Oh,
you going to
okay.
say?
So again, you've taken us through the basically the concept and then the construction, the creation of book one, book two, book three. You gave us a really exciting and poignant reason for taking Adam into that realm and that world. And how long did it take you to write that book? And you also mentioned there's a contract for four, five, and six. So do you have a master arc that you're looking at now that you've really gotten into the world of Adam Paradise?
I actually do, and that's the thing. Usually, when I write a character, I very often see their birth and their death. I see lo, I see before me my brothers and sisters. I very much see that. And with Adam's case, as I said, originally it was going to be a one-off, and within 2 weeks he's like, no, 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 we're not leaving. Um, and once I decided it was going to be more than one book, um, I said, okay, each book is going to explore um, an, another culture that he will connect with, that his outsider status will allow him sort of special status. I want to. I'm trying very much to avoid the white savior trope, um, so that, like, in the third book, even though he's going up against an evil Hunan, um, there's a Mambo who's on his side, and it's the Mambo and Vandoma and Adam that cause things to. It's not just he magically solves everybody's problems, kind of thing. The fourth book, he goes to Los Angeles because I've been two things in the books, all of them, because of his unique state. Adam is life from death. And because of that, he can see the essence of what people were, not necessarily ghosts, but he sees colors and shapes. He describes it as walking, if you were walking through an underwater kelp garden. He can
Mm.
see these shapes in different colors. He can look at someone and say, there are black and indigo shapes hovering about that person. He killed someone, which makes it very convenient for murder investigations. He he can see amber around a priest, that this is a good man. And most people, though, are a mix of those. He can see an ancestral connection. And it's not giving much away, but in the zombies, he can see the thread leading from the zombie off into the ether where their soul is, because now it's just the empty body. And in each of the books, he learns more about this. In the first book, he learns exactly what it is. And because of this, the only way he sees the world the way we do is by going to the movies. Because he can sit in a movie theater and he can watch, The Saint, and he sees streets that don't have these shapes in them on screen. So in a sense, in the movies, he sees closer to what we see in real life than his own real life. And so it only seemed natural that I would take him to Hollywood. Also, I've done a number of series in Hollywood, and I've got the background, so it'd be nice change. It's a little bit different. And there was fascist organizations there. There were Japanese spies. Because I also, every book is set at a specific date. Because I want to make sure, like if it's set at June 13th of 1939, any songs he hears or any songs he knows are at least a month or two old or more.
Right.
I want to be aware of all the political stuff going on around it, so that small talk can refer to specific events.
It's world building, continuing to build that world. Yeah.
It grounded very, because I'm one of those people who screams at the History Channel, like a ranting old man, get off my lawn. So both of those things figure into taking it. In the fourth book, he goes to California. In the fifth book, by the way, the fourth book is titled "Clean the Blood Off My Hands."
Okay.
Macbeth.
Yes. And the fifth book, he comes back. Pardon?
Oh, must have been lunch.
Yeah, there you go. In the fifth book, he comes back to New York, and then I want to take him overseas. I'd like to take him to London for the sixth book. And eventually, I want him to go into Nazi Germany to rescue some relative of Vandoma's.
Oh, fantastic.
Because he is the ultimate enemy of the whole Nazi mindset. They picture themselves as, somebody once said, why is it that every time one of these guys comes up and says they're the master race, they're like the worst possible physical specimen you can imagine. They're, toothless, overweight, mentally defective, and so he is like, he's their ultimate nightmare. Of course, he'd also be the nightmare of the Catholic Church too, because the whole idea of, coming back, we don't like that.
Yeah.
But I would like to take him overseas eventually. In his history, he came from the Arctic. He went to Sweden for a while, then financed himself. He went to Marseille for a year and decided that after kind of seeing what the world was like, that New York would be a great place for him to hide, to among the cosmopolitanness of it. And there are several times he mentions that I may be unusual at first glance, but in New York they look and then keep going. So it's a certain amount of
so if you're interested, ladies and gents, Teel James Glenn, Not Born of Woman. That's the first book. You can jump on right now and you get through it. Such a great page turn. You say, I'm hungry for more. And you can go to A Walking Shadow, which is book 2. And by the time you finish this page turner, then The Undiscovered Country will be out and you can do the trifecta. And by that time, you'll be like, come on, Teel, where's the fourth book?
Yeah, I had people approaching me this past weekend going, what? It's out in May. When's the next one coming out? It's on pre-order now. But yeah, so I've already had some people, which is great because he possessed me. I will say this, that after the third book, for about a month and a half, I couldn't write anything. I edited some stuff because I just felt emotionally exhausted.
Sure.
Well,
And
considering what you said about the third book, I'm not surprised.
I mean, it took me like almost 7 months to write it, which is long for me now. There would be long stretches where I was just like, I can do a scene and like, but at Litch, Long Island Convention of Horror, a publisher, I gave him a copy of the first book, and on Saturday, and he came by the table on Sunday and called me a bad name and said, I didn't get any sleep last night because of you. Give me the second book. And he also said, I want something like this. And so after about 2.5 months, I was able to come up with, as one of my writing groups said, it's in the same forest, but a different path. So I'm now working on Alias Johnny Druid as the next book to kind of pitch.
Do you want to tell us who Alias Johnny Druid is? Or not yet?
His real name is Gani Ambergin Druid, but everybody calls him Johnny because it's an Irish. It's a private eye and who gets involved with Fae, but not happy Fae. But it's a little more procedural. It's closer to the first Paradise book in that was a much procedural kind of thing.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, trying to make it very, I don't want to repeat myself.
Yeah, fantastic.
Does he
So
have
we have so much to look at.
Does he have to rescue Faye from a giant monkey?
Nope. But realize
Not that kind of Faye.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on. There's no Ray to that Faye.
That's so unrealistic. If that had fallen where he did, he would have been 300 fur coats in a half hour.
That's right. That was the Garment District, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No,
But I'm going to say you've given everybody a lot to think about, a lot to feed on, as it were.
We got to bring him over and talk to him about procedure and that kind of stuff. Don't you think?
Yeah, I would definitely. There's got to be a part 2 to this, and there will be. But we're going to round off part 1 by saying, Teel, thank you for that one, and let's like get our heads together for part 2, which folks will be coming at you sooner than you expect.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you,
Teel,
Joe.
thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be in the company of both you gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Shucks. I like you too.
Yeah, I pay him for that.
Can't stand. It's so cute.
Chris, Teel, thank you very much. People, if you have any questions, curiosities, all that, please drop them in the comments. I will also put a link to, I think it's your books are available on Amazon and any others. So I'll put a link in the comments to Amazon for at least the first 2 books, and you can also pre-order the third book. So hey,
yeah, read them up. Put some
ready.
reviews in there for Teel. That would be great.
Get your plastic ready, folks. Okay, everybody. Take care. See you soon.